So you just bought a BMW M340i and you want to give it 500 horsepower to the wheel. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to do just that in 3 simple steps. And I'm going to give you a bunch of tips and tricks to turn this thing into the ultimate daily driver sleeper car. And no, you don't need an M3 to go fast because this thing has a ton of tricks up its sleeve. So whether you want an M340 or you just bought an M340, I'm going to show you how to turn this thing into a beast. So this is my 2020 BMW M340i, and I'm going to show you everything that I did to it to make it 500 horsepower to the wheel and to make it as fast as a lot of supercars. Because yes, this thing has a 3.80 to 60 from the factory. With those bolt-on mods, you're probably sitting closer to 3 seconds. Because my car is actually faster than a stock BMW G80 M3. And yes, I'm talking about the all-wheel drive M3, which has a 2.80 to 60 time. And even though I haven't tested the 0 to 60 on this, I know for a fact it is faster than a G80 M3. I have raced a few G80 M3s over down in Mexico, and the ones that were stock, I've beaten every single one of them. So if I can beat a G80 M3, then I could definitely beat a supercar. So I'm gonna go into every single thing that you need to do to this car to make it the ultimate daily driver sleeper car, the ultimate G80 M3 killer, and the ultimate supercar killer. So nowadays with cars getting heavier, 500 horsepower is a perfect amount for the street. Back then, everyone used to say 400 horsepower was about the sweet spot, but now with cars like this weighing almost 4,000 pounds, I really think 500 horsepower is the best horsepower number for the street. So let's pop the hood and show you the very first thing that you need to turn this car into the ultimate 500 horsepower beast. So if you've watched my channel before, you know that I've made tons of videos on this car. If you were looking for literally anything that you need to know about this car, then definitely hit that subscribe button, but also check out all the other videos that I've posted on my channel. But the first thing you need, obviously, is a catless downpipe or even a catted downpipe, because when it comes to making power, it's all about air in versus air out. You want the air to go in the car as fast as possible to spool that turbo faster, because you're going to be pushing a higher boost level. So you need more air going into the turbo and more air coming out of the car. That air's got to go in as fast as possible so it can be processed as fast as possible, and then come out of the car as fast as possible. So there's a lot of debate between catted and catted downpipes, and I've made videos on my channel before about it, but all you need to know is if you're really worried about passing inspection, then go ahead and get a catted downpipe. But if you live somewhere where it doesn't really matter, then go ahead and get that catless downpipe, because a catless downpipe is going to give you the best sounds and the best power. Catted downpipes come with higher flowing cats than they would have stock, but either way, you have to change the downpipe on this car. You can't keep the stock downpipe at all, because the stock downpipe restricts the airflow so much. And like I said, when building a race car, even though this is just a regular 3 Series, it's all about air in versus air out. Now, the second thing that I definitely recommend getting, but it's not super important, is an air intake. Now, I've spoken a lot about air intakes on these cars all across videos on my channel, so I'm not trying to make them too repetitive, but in a nutshell, the air intakes on these cars, on the G Series BMWs, they don't do too much. So if you are looking to get an air intake, definitely get something like a front mount intake, because right here we have the active grills. These grills actually open and close depending on like how hot the engine is. So when the engine is getting hot, they're going to open up and force air right into that air intake. So if you get a front mount intake, the filter will be right behind here. I highly recommend the RK Tunes front mount intakes. Those are really the only ones that they sell for G Series cars. I know Project Gamma has some, but they're more for like actual M cars. But on the M340i, the RK Tunes one is by far the best. Talking about an exhaust, you don't really need one on this car because they're more for sound. They don't really add a ton of horsepower. I've mentioned that in my videos before. I'm just going to touch on it briefly right now. But exhausts on these cars are really for sound, because G Series BMWs don't have resonators on their cars at all. But if you want to build the ultimate supercar killer, you've got to have that sound. So you've got to go ahead and buy something like a Valvetronic exhaust. This exhaust sounds amazing. I'm not sponsored by them by any means. I honestly wish I was, because then I wouldn't have spent the full price on this exhaust. But even though they don't add horsepower, they do make your car sound really good. But let's talk about the second thing that you need to make this M340i into the ultimate sleeper car and the ultimate supercar killer. And I tried to mention it in my last video, but unfortunately the footage got cut. So let's talk all about it now, and that is a flex fuel kit. Now the flex fuel kit is one of those things that kind of blend into all these wires that I have under here. But if you look right behind this, all the way back there, you can see that little thing that says Visconti tuning. And by the way, guys, although the flex fuel kit is the second one, the last thing is by far the most important. But what a flex fuel kit does is that it allows you to run flex fuel, and it allows you to take full advantage of this thing right over here, which is your fuel pump. Now with both of these things working hand in hand, it allows you to run E50, which is a blend or a mix of E85 and 93 octane gas. Now I've had flex fuel on this car forever, ever since I got it, and it's probably one of the best mods that I've put on my car, because not only does E85 gas make your car faster, but it's also cheaper. And in 2024, when gas prices are shooting through the roof depending on what state you live in, having flex fuel in your car to at least run 50% ethanol in your car is not only going to save you some money at the gas pump, but it literally gives your car 50 more horsepower for putting in a cheaper gas. Now usually with car mods, the more money you spend, the more power you get. That's not the case with flex fuel. And what the flex fuel kit does is that that it's an ethanol sensor that attaches to your fuel line that automatically reads the ethanol content in your car. So it can tell if you have E50, E40, E30, or whatever, and it optimizes your tune depending on whatever ethanol content you have in the car. So with a flex fuel kit, you don't need to worry about misfires. You don't need to worry about anything blowing your engine. All you do is fill up the car and go. And I believe on G series cars, you can run up to something like E60, but most people don't usually go above E50 because you don't really get any big power gains. Usually I'll fill up my car with about 9 gallons of E85 and the rest just do 93. And because of how expensive gas is around me, I usually save around 10 bucks every single time I do that. And since I fill up pretty much every week, that's about 40 bucks a month. But in this case, yeah, cheaper gas actually means a faster car, because if you're just tuned on 93, you'll have somewhere around 450 horsepower to the wheel. But putting out an E50, I've seen bolt-on cars go above 500 horsepower. My car is just sitting at about 500, and the reason it is because of the third thing, and by far the most important thing, and that is my tune. Now there's a lot of debate online as to what tune is the best that you can get for the M340i. And I'm not going to talk about sending your ECU out to femto and everything if you have a 2021 plus, because I actually spoke about that in my last video, so go ahead and check that out if you're interested. But what I am going to talk about is off-the-shelf maps versus custom tuning. There is so much debate on this because so many people think that they can just get an off-the-shelf map and their car is going to run perfectly fine. And this is not the case at all. I have so many friends with similar cars as I do with off-the-shelf maps that I keep telling them that they need to get a custom tune. Because think about it like this. Cars are a lot like clothes. While something like jeans or a hoodie might look good on anybody, there are certain things that might fit your body type or skin tone a little bit more than they do for other people. And that is kind of the same thing with a custom tune. When you get a tune, you want a custom tune that's going to fit your car exactly how it's supposed to fit. Because believe it or not, every single M340i from the factory is not exactly identical, or any car for that matter. So you always need to get a custom tune because that tune is going to get the best out of your specific car. Usually if you have an off-the-shelf tune from someone like MHD, you could expect to get like 450-ish horsepower with E50, but you're going to get something like a 40 to 50 horsepower increase if you get a custom tune. And when I mentioned Visconti tuning back there, he not only makes my flex fuel kit, but he actually is also my tuner. You can get a custom tune from him or someone like STI Mikey or RK Tunes, and they might point you to whatever tuning service that they like to use, like MHD, Bootmod, EcuTech, or whoever. But the bottom line is that a custom tune is always going to be better for your car than just an off-the-shelf tune. And speaking about clothes, think about it like running shoes. You can buy a good set of running shoes and you might be fast, but if you get a set of running shoes that fit your specific feet perfectly, you are always going to be more comfortable and run faster. And I'm not a runner, so I don't know if that's exactly real, but you get what I mean. I'm trying to tell you that getting a custom tune is the #1 thing that you need to make this car fast and make it into the ultimate sleeper car. But it doesn't end there, because I have a few other tips and tricks that you can use to make your car faster than just the average bolt-on 3 Series. And something that I only found out about 2 years ago is probably the best tip that I have for anyone who wants to build a fast BMW. And that is to get an XHP flash transmission tune. Now this car, the M340, doesn't have a DCT like older BMWs had. It has the ZF 8-speed transmission, which is a torque converter automatic. Now this transmission shifts super fast from the factory, but there's actually this thing called an XHP flash tune that makes it shift way faster. Now I want to say the XHP flash tune is about 400 bucks, but to me is by far one of the most important things that you've got to have on this car if you want to go fast. Because not only does it make your transmission shift faster, but it actually gives your car like this crazy noise when you shift that literally almost sounds like a whip. And when you're going through a tunnel, it sounds beautiful. XHP flash tune is going to make your car shift so much faster than it does stock. And as of right now, they have stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Now somebody asked me this in the YouTube comments earlier this week, and I wanted to answer it in this video. And it's all about which one you should get. Now I recommend you only go with stage 1. I've heard that stage 2 doesn't really do much different as opposed to stage 1, but if you really want to risk it all and get the fastest shifts possible, then go ahead and go with stage 3. On my car, I only have stage 1, and that's because I've heard on stage 3, if you kind of abuse the car a little too much, or if you do too many launches, you can potentially snap your drive shaft, or maybe even snap one of your axles. And if you watched my last video, then you'd know that compared to real full-on M cars like a G80 M3, the axles and the drive shaft on these cars are one of the weakest points of the cars. And there's something that you really need to upgrade if you want to push higher horsepower numbers. But since we're only trying to push 500 wheel horsepower, you don't really need to upgrade those. What I'd recommend is if you want the fastest shifting BMW on planet Earth, go with an XHP stage 3 tune. But all I'm saying is be careful if you accelerate or launch your car over and over again. As for me, I just wanted something that shifts faster than stock and something that's a little bit safer for the car, so I went ahead and only did XHP stage 1. Now the last tip that I have for you guys is wheels, because with all that new power, you've got to have something to put that power to the ground. Because even on an all-wheel drive car like this, yes, you can actually spin all 4 tires very easily, especially if you have that XHP flash tune. So on this car, I have Supra spec wheels. These are TE37s, and I know not everyone's a fan of them. A lot of people don't like the white on white look, but all you really need to know is that they are Supra spec wheels. They're 19 by 9.5 in the front, 19 by 10.5 in the rear, and the offsets are just regular Supra spec offsets. I believe it's like 22 in the front, 35 in the rear, something around that range, but the tires are the most important thing. And by the way, if you are wondering, yes, I am lowered. I'm on H&R lowering springs. So right now I have these Continental DWS 06 Plus tires on my car. They're just regular performance all-season tires because I needed a good set to get me through the winter last year. Since it's an all-wheel drive car, you don't really need a dedicated summer and winter setup, but if you want to be fast, then you've got to have full-on summer tires on this car. Because if I'm being honest, even though these are high-performance all-seasons, they don't really grip well. And even when I air down the tires to get a wider contact patch, I'll go from the recommended 35 PSI down to like 29 or 30, just so the tire grips a little bit more when I'm actually doing fun stuff in my car. And if you're wondering, no, that doesn't affect the wheels or the car at all. But with these all-season tires, it is still a little bit hard to grip. So you definitely want to get something like Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, or even what a lot of people do is that they'll get something like drag tires. Street legal, of course, Nitto NT 555s, Toyo R888Rs. But if you didn't know, with the M340i on xDrive, it is rear biased, which means that it's not perfect 50-50 power distribution. On something like an Audi or a Subaru, which has a really good all-wheel drive system, you get 50% of the power in the front and 50% in the rear. On BMWs, the xDrive is rear biased, which means you're getting something like 60 or even 70% of your power sent to the rear wheels. So because of that, a lot of people like to run summer tires in the front, like Pilot Sport 4S's, and like a street legal drag tire in the rear, like an NT 555 from Nitto. But you've got to think about it. Are you daily driving this car? Because maybe drag tires wouldn't be the best thing for you. But all I know is if you get Pilot Sport 4S's from Michelin, you'll usually always grip and you won't have any traction problem. As my car sits right now, if I turn traction control off and I do a launch, probably 9 times out of 10, I will spin all 4 wheels. And that is with a good set of high performance all-season tires. And that's really because all seasons are hard to warm up. So 1000%, if you want to grip and put all that power to the ground, you've got to get wider wheels and you've got to get better tires. So with all those mods and all those tips, you should have enough to make your M340i make 500 horsepower to the wheel and to have a faster 0 to 60 than a BMW M3, or in reality most supercars these days, because there are a ton of supercars that still have 0 to 60s in the 3-second range. But with your 500 horsepower M340i, you'll be able to beat them no problem. And with all those mods, you can probably beat them from a roll, and with those wider wheels and wider tires, you probably can also beat them from a dig. If I'm being honest, I've never really raced a supercar, but I can almost guarantee that if I saw one on the highway, I'd definitely be excited to race them, and I think I could probably beat them. So with a downpipe, a flex fuel kit, and a tune, and with an XHP flash tune, it will make your car launch and shift way faster than it would stock. And with those wider wheels and wider tires, you will always put the power to the ground. And if you learned something from this video, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I post 2 videos a week on everything you need to know about this M340i and all BMWs in general. And with all that being said, I'm Ryan from Gears and Gains, and I will see you in the next one.